How's it going, guys? It's Cole from See-Through Panel, doing something a little bit different here. I want to talk about my actual physical book here, The World of Edena, written and illustrated by Mobius, printed by Dark Horse, retailing for about $50. You can still get it, it's still in print. The reason I'm talking about this in this format, as opposed to the podcast, is because sometimes on the podcast I feel like I can't describe the art to the extent that I want to. It's impossible to really describe Mobius art just with words. And this way you can at least see what I'm talking about and kind of understand it. The reason that I'm doing this book is because this was my first real book outside of DC, Marvel, or Image. I had never read a European comic, bande dessinée. I had never read Mobius specifically, obviously, if I hadn't read European comics. So this got me into Mobius. Really made me fall in love with his work, and I think to this day he's still my favorite artist by far. I've tried to collect his whole catalog, but out of all of that, this is probably my favorite Mobius work. I think it's got the most cohesive story. It's pure Mobius. There's no writer here. It's just him and his own thoughts, and I really love this book, so I'll get into the actual hardcover real quick. It is a sewn binding. I've had it for about 5 years. I've reread it multiple times. It's always kept up very well. The quality of Dark Horse's collected editions has been pretty good lately, and for the Mobius library especially, I think it's good. They also printed the companion, The Art of Edena. Similar spine here. Just an art book of related pieces to this work from the same time period that it was made, in a similar style. So even some computer generated stuff here, which is very interesting. Yeah, let's get into the book. So this book actually started as an ad, a car ad in 1983, which I find to be very, very cool. It's kind of interesting that this was just a simple idea that he had that kind of slowly formed into something much larger. So this ad for this car company became this tome right here, and it really developed and kind of took over, and he just ran with it, which I really, really think that's a cool concept. I'm not going to go too far into spoilers or anything with this. I just would like to show you the art and kind of show you why I really love this book, but I don't want to get too deep into plot. This isn't going to be the normal review we do on the show. Just kind of showing off the book, really. So the premise, without getting too deep into spoilers, is that two essentially spaceship repairmen crash land on a planet called Edena. They are in this future. Let me find it. Oh, that's beautiful design too. That kind of bubble ship they're in, which is also on the cover. A nice bit of varnish on it. The kind of simple, clean design at the beginning here, that kind of Linclair, perfectly detailed and very, very clean. The coloring's very flat, you can see. And these characters, as you can see, they're kind of almost featureless. They're very simple looking. That's because it's actually part of the story. In this future, hormones are very controlled, and so people kind of don't have a gender like we would view it today. But when they crash land, start eating food, start eating apples off this tree, and start kind of living a normal life on Edena, they start to get features and traits of genders, and they start to evolve, kind of. They start to change. The way they think changes, the way they act changes, the way they look changes the most, I would say. And that is just beautiful. And so, I want to contrast this very clean, very flat colored style to one that shows up later in the book, and I think is kind of thematically linked. So here, the characters are simple. The line work, the colors are simple, but once they've kind of changed due to Edena and taken on this form. That is actually one of your characters right there. And you can tell already that things have become a little more complicated in the story and in the art. And you can see that in these panels here, there is a ton more shading. There's more gradient to the colors. There's just a lot more going on. You can see it kind of shadows falling down here. Even just the figure work has a lot more to it. They're not just kind of eyes and nose and a mouth on a blob face as they were before. And there is nudity in this book, so I'm being very careful not to skip over to any of that. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm not going to explain anything that's going on to avoid spoilers, but there is a little bit of that style change that I think is definitely on purpose. Like, there's no way that Moebius couldn't draw like this at the beginning. He had this in him, obviously, but I think he chose to do kind of this cleaner, simpler design, because the story was simple and it was clean and so were the characters. But as things evolve in this giant sci-fi epic, so does the art. And my final thing I wanted to show here was, there we are. This is almost the third style that I noticed just before I was putting this video together. I was going to talk about his two styles, but he kind of has a third. So in this chapter specifically, I find that there's a lot of these white lines that he uses on figures, even around the nose there, and on the head. That's not actual flare of the light, that's just on the art. And yeah, look at that. Thick black outlines. And then that white pen again right there. And obviously in this panel here, maybe he's doing the thick black outlines to bring the rocks to the foreground so that we know that the ship's colliding into them. But I think stylistically he's doing that in a lot of other places that aren't for that use. And I think this is one of my preferred styles for Moebius, honestly, now that I've noticed it, is these thick black outlines, the white line kind of used to embellish a little bit more on the characters' faces and give off some more play of the light. I think is really cool. Yeah, it's just, I love these guys with the pill faces. Kind of anteater mixed with like a big ass pill stuck through their head. I'm showing a lot of pages here. I'm hoping none of it spoils anything. It's pretty complicated and psychedelic at times, so I don't think you can glean really anything out of this. But hopefully I've illustrated why I find this book to be so wonderful. Show a couple pages from Art of Edena before it's over. There's that wonderful design again with the kind of bubble ship. In the Art of Edena, it's very obvious the different styles he's using, because he likes to play around with a lot of different formats, and like this is just almost like just sketches with colored pencils. And then here we've got some fully processed Moebius art. Oh, that's crazy. And yeah, there's even some comics like this in the Art of Edena book, which I really like. So it's probably not going to have a lot of words to it, but it is sequential storytelling, and that I think is equally as engaging, especially when you're talking about Moebius. So I really appreciate you guys watching. If you're interested in this kind of format instead of the podcast, I'm going to be doing a little bit more of these. I'm kind of just going to be picking them out of my library as I see fit without really any reason to do so, just kind of whatever strikes my fancy. If there's anything that we talked about on the podcast that you want to see covered, let me know. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks a ton.